It's 18:32, so I think we will start the meeting. Others may join us, but I'm sure they will be rapidly removed from the waiting room to join the discussion. Welcome to this second, is it more, virtual session of the Parish Liaison Meeting. I'm Lisa O'Brien, Chair of Avon's Council. Can I remind you all to keep any background noise to the minimum, only speak one person at a time, and don't try to speak over others. Please, when you're not speaking, can you mute your microphones, because this can cause feedback. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, if you would type into the chat, MIS, may I speak, then I can call you in turn. The meeting will be recorded and placed on the Council's YouTube channel so that you can view it afterwards if you wish. We do have a very slightly different format this evening, as we welcome two very special guests. Mark Shelford, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon, Somerset, and Dan Norris, our West of England Metro. We will therefore only have one related update on Council's recent motions, and that is the unanimous motion passed on safety for women. Issues raised by the parishes, questions have been passed to us by Baines Alka, and written responses will be circulated after the meeting. Hopefully a lot of the questions will be answered in the addresses this evening. We know that you parishes have been asking for the Police and Crime Commissioner and the West of England Metro to attend the parish this meeting for some time. And so we're delighted that they're both able to join us. It's a bit of a coup to have both in one evening. We look forward to hearing from them, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Now, Mark does have to get away for another meeting by about 7:10, so we will move quite swiftly on with that in mind. So, Marie, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, have apologies from councillors Alison Bourne, Tom Davis, Amanda Rigby, Richard Samuel, Andy Waite, from Jeanette Stevenson from Alca, and Trudy Gilbank, Clerk to Farnborough Parish Council.
Okay, thank you. Now, can you all hear me clearly, or am I still coming across as a little quiet? Thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Thank you. There is no urgent business that I have. Can we confirm the minutes of the previous meeting on the 14th of July? Can I have someone to propose those, please? Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Seconded. Kevin, were you there at the last meeting?
Briefly, I think, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor McPhee. Thank you. All those in favour? Is there, or rather, should I say, is there anyone who wishes to vote against acceptance of the minutes? Please indicate in the chat. No abstentions? Right, they have been passed. Thank you. As Kevin said, he was only able to stay at our meeting for a short while. So I'm very pleased to introduce Kevin Guy, who is leader of council at the moment, to say a few words. Kevin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And welcome everybody. Obviously, this is a really important forum for making sure that parishes and members of parishes and members of communities are kept in touch with what Baines is doing and what we're doing as a wider community. Normally, I would go with a long ramble about what Baines is doing at the moment and how it's connected to the parishes, and then allow you to ask questions to myself. But we'll do that at the next parish meeting, because I'm very aware that we've got two special guests this evening, Mark and Dan. And I know Mark, I believe, is coming round Bath on Friday and visiting us all there and seeing many different sites and talking about security issues. So without further ado, because I know Mark's got to go, we'll move straight on to Mark's section, if that's okay with you, Chair.
That's fine, thank you. So welcome to Mark Shelford, Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset. Over to you.
Lisa, thank you very much, and Kevin and Dina, as well as Alison, for allowing me to take part in this meeting. And I thoroughly used to enjoy them when I was part of the council, and particularly on the executive, and noted how important they were to the good running of Avon and Somerset. So, or rather, Bath and North East Somerset. So tonight I was just going to tell you a little bit about my role, what I do, what I've got up to since I got into post, and then finally concentrate a little bit on what we're doing around violence against women and girls, because I know that's a very important topic that we need to deal with head on. But one thing I want to get out right at the beginning is that as part of my manifesto, and when I was knocking on doors, I said that I wanted to have a councillors' crime forum in the first year once every 6 months, and then thereafter once every 12 months, where we would do it by council area on one day, and then have the opportunity for people to drop in and out as depended when your council area was there. Good start after Christmas. That's the next set of work that I have set the team, so that you will all be able to come and talk to me and my team around what the issues are that you face in order to try and deal with them, particularly in the rural areas where sometimes they feel forgotten, and I don't forget you. So what does a PCC do? Well, by law, I have to do certain things. The first is to secure an efficient police service. I have to appoint a Chief Constable and then hold them to account. And I'm going through that process now. On Monday, we did the paper sieve. And then on the 3rd and 4th of November, we will do a series of tests and interviews. And at the end of that process, I will get enough information where I make the decision on who the next Chief Constable will be, or not to appoint a Chief Constable if they're not up to the required standard. If they are, and I do appoint one, we won't hear anything about that until it goes to the Police and Crime Board, where they will have a confirmatory hearing. Once that is done, it will then be announced to the public who the next Chief Constable is. I have to set the police and crime plan for the totality of my tour. And that basically is on all the information I gleaned during the time that I was a candidate. I was a candidate for a very long time, 2¼ years. And therefore I got out to all the 16 constituencies that make up Avon and Somerset, and knocked on loads of people's doors. And during the COVID time, I was on the phone every afternoon between 2 and 7 o'clock during the weekdays, ringing people. And I know I dragged lots of you in to help me as well on those phone lines to really get an understanding of what their people's concerns are about police and crime. And that has helped me draft the police and crime plan. You may be aware it's been out for consultation for 12 weeks. It's now come back in, it's been converted into a plan, and it's going out to the police and crime panel for their scrutiny and their look at. Along with that, I then have to fund the police to make sure they can do that work that's contained in the police and crime plan. And that funding comes, as you're not surprised, partly through central government and then partly through the precept. And on your council tax bill, you will know that there's a bit there, a precept for fire, for police, and for your parish councils. And that is a negotiation that I have to do with each council in turn, and also with the police and crime panel, to make sure that we get the balance right there and everybody understands what that precept is for and what we're trying to achieve with it. As well as doing that, I have to contribute to national and international policing capabilities for UK government. And you'll be aware that the G7 conference that happened in Cornwall, we sent a lot of specialist police officers with specialist kit down there. And that's one specific officer I do. I'm sure we will be contributing to Scotland when they're up there, but I don't know what capability is required at this moment. I need to bring together the communities to make them safer, and also the criminal justice partners. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I am the chair of the local criminal justice board. That includes the prisons, probation, the CPS, the people who put the charges together against criminals, and the CCGs are part of that. And I'm trying to encourage education branches to be part of that as well. Now that's quite interesting because that's challenging, because there isn't one set of education at any one place anymore because of academies, etc. So that's proving quite difficult to get my arms as to who should be on the criminal justice board. But education is very important. And an example of that is if you exclude a child, particularly a teenage child from school, and there isn't the right level of provision, they will generally end up in trouble. And most teenage children that we connect with at an early stage are people who have been excluded. And so we need to make a big effort to try and prevent that happening. So that's part of that piece about the Criminal Justice Board. I also work with the office to commission victims' services to ensure that victims of crime have access to support and help to help them recover. And one of those is the bridge in Bristol, that effectively those people who have been sexually assaulted or maybe raped. The bridge is a fantastic place in Bristol, which has a complete wraparound package of support and help, medical and mental, and also from a criminal justice perspective and the forming of the cases. My only concern about that is there's only one in Bath and in Avon and Somerset. And if you're in Minehead and you're assaulted, it's a hell of a long slog up to North Bristol to that centre. And that, to my mind, increases the trauma which we're trying to reduce. And so one of the things I'm looking at is whether we can make that service more mobile, so it could come to you, or whether we could have more services spread around. But they are quite significant and costing, and so I'm not quite there yet with that plan, but it's something I'm working on. I also have to be the local voice of the people, that about what their concerns are about police and crime. And as I said, during my time as a candidate, I was able to really get that feel on the doorstep, one-to-one, about what really concerned people. And I listened to make sure that the police priorities are right. So that's the sort of, what does a PCC do? My background, for those of you who don't know it, an ex-soldier, and more recently, by accident and by a trick of the Conservative Party, I accidentally became a local councillor. And then with Lisa's help and support, I became a cabinet member, and then the deputy leader in Bath, which was terrific. And I absolutely applaud and support all councillors at whatever level you are, because you do a fantastic job for the people of your parishes, your wards. You often go unpraised. You often take a lot of stick. You often work incredibly long hours for them with not much joy. But when you do pull that lever and the council moves to help, gosh, it's a good warm feeling inside. And I absolutely support you for what you do, and thank you for that. Why did I want to become the PCC? Well, I was lucky enough, as one of my roles on the council, to be part of both the fire authority and also the police and crime panel. And I got to see the work at first hand of Sue Martin Stevens, who was my predecessor, and felt that I could contribute with some of the skill sets I had from my time in the military and in business. So what are my priorities as police and crime commissioner? Well, first is to deliver an efficient and effective police service and make the people of Avon and Somerset not only safer, but feel safer. And we can come back to that question in a minute. I'm also a firm believer in the Pdn Principles of Policing. So Robert Peel invented the Metropolitan Police, and of course chose a soldier to be the first commissioner of the police. Very sensible fellow. And the specific two big principles that I think are really important. First is that the police are the community, and the community are the police. That's police by consent. That is so important, and many countries don't have that, and that is a jewel in the crown of British policing. We need to keep it, and it's under huge threat right now, and we need to acknowledge it, step up to the plate, sort it out, and move forward to make sure that we get that community trust again. And the second really important Pdn principle, which is the thread, the golden thread throughout my plan, is we must prevent crime rather than focusing just on chasing criminals. And that is an interesting piece, and it's a complete culture change for the police force, because you don't become a senior police officer unless you've had a big bust as a detective. And the vast majority, almost without exclusion, senior police officers are ex-detectives. So to say to them, well, actually, I want you to stop the crime happening in the first place, because all of us don't want to suffer from crime. And it's really important that. So I'm moving the whole process in a different direction in order to focus on that. As I said, the plan has gone out for consultation for 12 weeks. We've had more responses to that consultation than any other consultation that the office has ever done, by some 80%, which is a testament to how hard the team in the office worked to get that consultation out. And for those of you who completed it yourselves, thank you. Also, for those of you who said how clunky the electronic version of the consultation was, that was really helpful for me to go and beat up the people who do the IT that design those consultations, and to say, look, there are much better ways of doing it than we did it. But with your help, we'll make it better for next time. And the plan itself is a legal document, and it holds the Chief Constable to account. They have to deliver that plan, and that's what every month at the Police and Crime Board, which I chaired today, I hold the Chief Constable to account specifically on issues around the plan. We do deep dives in different areas, and we make sure that they are delivering for the people of Avon and Somerset, because I remind all the staff and the police officers that the public are their paymasters as well as their clients. Never forget that. So what has been achieved so far? The Police and Crime Plan, the survey. I've also taken on a national portfolio role for economic and cybercrime, and I want to make all people more resilient and resistant to that type of crime. The sorts of things you might get phoned up and say you owe the television license £50, you haven't paid it, or you might get a scam email that says you haven't paid HMRC, you've got tax issues, and we all know they're crime. But when you're tired, when you come back from the office from a hard day's work, or you've been out on the farm and you get these things, you quickly flick at them and say, oh my God, I owe some money, I must pay that quickly and then move on to the next thing. And suddenly you discover you've been scammed. And indeed, my nephew was scammed in London to the tune of £4,000 that he had in his current account that was emptied as a consequence of doing that. It's very real. Real people are hurt by this, and we've got to do better at stopping it happening. So shortly after Christmas, I hope to be able to deliver to all people over 60 within Avon and Somerset a card that will give information about what to do to prevent getting scammed, either by phone, by emails, and also by text messages, and then also report lines of what you do if you have been, and any feedback and where you can get current information on it. And if that is a success, if that works well, I'm going to roll that out nationally on the back of the experiment within Avon and Somerset. So I would ask all of you, please, to take part in that. Most of you won't be over 60. I'm just about, on the 24th of November, I'm going to be 60. And so I'll get a card myself, but most of you are so young, you won't have one of those. The APC commissioning team has done a number of really good bids into the MAJ, the Ministry of Justice, to the tune of about 1.6 million this year, to boost our support to domestic violence and sexual violence. And that's really good news. That gives extra operations on the ground to help. I've successfully appointed a chief of staff, also curiously from the MAJ, although we can't announce her name yet. She will be taking over at Christmas. And I've set in chain a review of the commissioning programme. The office commissioned about 3.5 million quid's worth of services around Avon and Somerset. And I'm looking at how we do that to make sure it's as efficient as possible. The new Chief Constable will be being posted, I hope, late November early December. But there's lots of work to be done. I set a Super 5 set of bits of work to do before Christmas. Most of that will be achieved, which is good. And then the office will kick off with a Super 5 after Christmas, of which you've heard of 2 of those. I think it would be appropriate now to move to the elephant in the room, violence against women. Like all of you, I was horrified and frankly disgusted by the murder of Sarah Everard, particularly when the details came out. And I felt physically sick because of the issues that what it would do to the confidence of people with the police. One horrendous person destroying all that trust immediately, and it really hurt. And so we've got to work so hard, all of us, to rebuild that trust within the policing community. And I was on the radio twice yesterday, as you probably, some of you might have heard, about the fact it is the responsibility of the police to rebuild that trust and to make sure that people, that when they approach people to arrest them, they do it in such a way that everybody knows that they are absolutely legitimate and they generate the trust. It's not for the individuals to try and do that. And so the emphasis has been absolutely on those officers to do that. And last week, I whizzed around all the, well, not all, but as many police officers as I possibly could, and spoke to as many police officers in what I called a hug and a grip. So the hug was putting my arms around them and saying that I understand how awful this is, you know, how one person has really, really caused such a drama, how angry you feel about that person. I recognize all of that and how we need to get back on the front foot. But the gripping bit was to make sure that everybody knew that misogyny within the police force was absolutely unacceptable, and that the low-level commanders, the junior commanders, again need to step up to the plate, take responsibility, and when somebody goes to them and said, look, I'm unhappy about what's been going on, it's not right, they deal with it properly and efficiently and effectively, because it makes a much more efficient and effective force if it's dealt with by low-level commanders. And it's the sort of thing that I used to say in the military, and it's really important in the police that we get this right. And I've been talking to the senior officers about that leadership role and how important it is. Now, within Avon and Somerset, we have our own independent line where people can ring up if you're an employee without anybody knowing who you are, within your chain of command, to report something, report issues that you're concerned about, report improper behaviour, and then the professional standards department then investigate, and they investigate very heavily. And if there's any question of sexual impropriety, it really counts, because if you don't deal with it when it's a small, it might be the wolf whistle thing. If you don't deal with it then, it can generate up into a much greater thing. So it's one of those things that you have to take seriously, not only internally to the police to make sure we have absolutely the right culture within the police going forward, but also out on the street too. So when women and girls might feel uncomfortable, might be subject to hate crime of some form or other, we've got to get in there early, because if we do it at the time when it's shouting and being unpleasant to people, we can stop it becoming physical violence at that stage. Otherwise, it can be too late. The other aspect of that is the education piece and getting into schools early, hence the requirement for wanting to, within the Criminal Justice Board, get into schools and make sure we have the right levers there. About respect and how it's so important to teach our young to treat each other well, and basic manners, for goodness sake. Where have they gone? we just need to get back to that. And it's so important. I can't stress it enough. If we get it right there, these things won't happen later on. And we must have a system that works really well all the way up. So I think I sort of banged on quite a lot on this. There are lots of other information about what we're doing as far as women's and girls, about trauma-informed responses to that, evidence-based approach, as in the way that we investigate rape and serious sexual offences, making sure that we're going after the perpetrator, not the victim. And the emphasis has to be on that perpetrator and not the victim. Of course, the victim needs to have the wraparound services around them to help them, but it's the perpetrator that needs to be looked at. And I've asked the criminal justice branch to take much more risk in the cases that they put together with violence against women, so that we can get a higher percentage of those into court. And we're working that, and we've improved significantly. The numbers, I mean, I'm pleased that the numbers have increased some threefold in the last, well, let's say 4 months, but they're still not nearly enough. They're around about, they've gone from about 1.2%, they're now at 11. And I really want to push them up to I think a reasonable first proper step at the end of 3 years will be up to 50%. It's not enough, but it's a hell of a lot more than it has been before. And we're really focusing on doing that. But I'm happy to discuss that later. And finally, with the sort of engagement, as was said, I'm on an 8-week rotational cycle, doing 2 constituencies every Friday, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, on an 8-week cycle. So I always come back, and even if I don't pick it up this time, I'll be there next or the time after. So regularly, and the constituencies are absolutely more than just Bath and more than just North East Somerset and Keynsham. It's out into parishes. And I want to see councillors, obviously the MPs as well when they're available, but also charities that you feel that I ought to talk to, community groups you feel I ought to talk to. And as I said, after Christmas, we should launch this councillor crime forum for the whole of Avon and Somerset, and that will be 1 every 6 months in the first year, and then thereafter 1 every 12 months. So I think I banged on enough. I think you've got lots of questions you want to ask, and I'd be delighted to hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very, very much indeed. A lot of information for us to think about. We've had a comment from Councillor Jackson, hoping that women are going to be taken more seriously now because they haven't been in the past. I think you've indicated that you are moving in that direction. A specific question from Anna Beria of Caverton BC. What are your views on the proposed BT phone app to track women's movement and raise the alarm if they take too long to reach their destination? Could you give a view on that, please?
Yes, and I'm very careful about doing this. As you know, I lead on the strategic piece rather than the operational and tactical lead, and it's not really for me to comment on that. And I need police experts on it, but I come back to the point about interaction with police officers. It's up to the police officers to make the public feel comfortable and confident in their interaction. I'm a dad of a 21-year-old girl. Of course, I worry when they're out, and of course, I ask them to phone up regularly. And as a young officer of 25, I caused my parents the most horrible night because I was unthinking. I'd come back for a tour in Northern Ireland. I'd gone out with some friends and decided to spend the night. But I thought by the time I decided I was going to spend the night, I didn't ring my parents to say, by the way, I thought they'd want to sleep because of the time that I decided to spend the night. And they were up all night worried about me. I'd just done a tour in Northern Ireland, you know, I didn't think they need to worry about me, but they were. So parents never forget. And I'm not belittling the proper question you asked. I'm just saying, first of all, I don't think I should answer technically about it. Secondly, yes, as a dad and as a husband, of course I worry, and I ask people to phone me regularly to make sure that I know that they're there. I hope that sort of answers the question.
Thank you. Kathy Thomas, you submitted some questions to Mark on behalf of Alka. How much influence do you think you have on policing? I think he has, I believe he has explained that situation. The other issues, corrupt police officers, domestic violence, safety, women, racial injustices, you haven't touched on. Would you like to comment on that, Mark, before we go on to the next question?
Yes. Okay. So I kind of mentioned it about PSD, but it's important to go into definitions. So corrupt police officers, allegations of misconduct are taken extremely seriously, and depending on the allegation, officers or staff might be suspended from duty whilst the inquiry is carried out. And depending on the assessment of the threat, harm and risk, removed from public facing roles. If there's evidence of gross misconduct in a hearing, and that hearing will be chaired by a legally qualified chair who is independent of policing, they will be removed from the service. And that there is, depending on the level of corruption that has been found, I, as the PCC, have the ability to reduce their pension rights from if there's a particularly nasty case of corruption, I can intercede, which is why you will very rarely hear me talk about any become the last process of a police officer leaving the force. So they can appeal to me at the end, but also if I feel that they have really disgraced the service and the public confidence is turned, I can actually affect their final pension. I haven't spoken really much about the silent crime of domestic violence and safety of women, other than the overall piece about misogyny and intimidation and violence, which is totally unacceptable. And we need to make sure that all our streets are safe for all of us. And certainly around the nighttime economy, we're working up operational plans to put our metaphorical arms around those areas to make sure that girls and young women are safe. And particularly these horrid things like spiking of drinks. And you may have seen something on the telly or social media last week where blatantly in a party, a boy spiked a girl's drink, and it was caught on camera, and he's being charged, you'll be pleased to know. So it is, we are working hard at this to make sure that people are as safe as they possibly can be.
Okay, thank you. Question from Councillor Hansel. Will Avon and Somerset be receiving additional funds from the Safer Streets Home Office initiative to help with them safe?
We did actually under I think we in this last, so we did very well in the first bid. This bid that happened, I think it was published last Friday, if I'm right. We got I think 300,000 for North Somerset. It wasn't under the police title, it was under the council title, but we'd worked together in partnership to get the money.
Thank you. Looking at the time, Dina, would you like to comment, make a statement before Mark has to go?
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa. So thank you, Mark, for outlining the work that you're planning and for reassuring us all about how seriously you're taking the issue of violence against women and girls. I'm pleased to hear what sounds like you'll be enhancing the commitment made by your predecessor on gender hate crimes. I think at the time, from the little bit of research that I've done, the local constabulary was only the 3rd in the country to officially recognise gender-based hate crimes. So I hope you will be able to stay just a moment or two longer, as I wanted you to hear of the work that women counsellors have undertaken. So just to sort of give a bit of a recap, we came together in shock following the murder of Sarah Everard, little knowing much more than the details then of the crime itself. And I know that we've all been, you know, even more shocked when we learned some of the detail of how the police officer deceived her. And we were outraged as much by the murder as by the sense that somehow Sarah Everard had brought this upon herself by walking home alone after dark from a friend's house. And it seemed then accepted that it is women's fault that they become victims. Bath and North East Somerset women counsellors, regardless of political party, believe that it is not right and that must stop. We asked the council to play its part and to make sure that decisions would not put more risk on women and that women could then go about their lives without fear. The motion that I think you will have seen in the papers before you, in fact on the screen now, was passed, and I was delighted that it was passed unanimously by all councillors in September, and we are expecting to have a formal response to the full council in November. But in the meantime, I'm very happy to give a short heads up on progress or to answer any questions. And I'll obviously send you, Mark, a copy of this motion as well, because I'm sure you'll be very interested in that. But I think some of the key things we wanted to really embed were that women have a right to expect that where they are is safe. And some of the work that we've been doing has been looking at lighting in certain places, and also supporting a scheme called Ask Angela. So I know our officers are working with the licensing department within the council to ensure that licensed businesses do take part. And I'm happy to give more of an update on that if people aren't aware what Ask Angela is. We've also asked council departments to make sure that the areas that they are responsible for are safe places, and we'll also be calling on housing associations and parish councils as well. So this is, where you will play your part as leaders and members of parish councils as well. And we will be asking schools and colleges, universities and youth organisations to renew their efforts to promote a safer, to promote safety and respect for all agenda amongst the young people that they are dealing with. So that was a bit of a whistle stop whisk through that, so that I could make sure that I could speak directly to Mark Shelford and make sure he was aware of the work that we were doing. So hopefully that's swift enough for you, Mark, but not too fast.
No, very good and excellent stuff. And all of that I fully support. And we're working in parallel to that, as you would expect, because of our close working relationship between the council and the police. So it's good to see. And we just got to get back to that respect, and people's attitudes have got to change for the better. Everybody's got to feel safe out there, and we need to work hard at that.
Thank you.
I'm aware now that you do have to rush off to another meeting. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone. We've got 47 participants, so it's really what you've had to say tonight, I'm sure, has given reassurance to many, and we look forward to more groundbreaking initiatives and developments, particularly or the safety of all people, irrespective of sex or race or disposition. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you all very much, and good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Okay, now, Dina, would you, right, we've got something that Dan Hatchcliffe from the police has put up. I would urge you, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I would urge everyone to look at the chat, because Dan is giving us information about how you can contact, how you can find out more, and please, I think he's nodding, please do so. He hasn't just said this to him. Dan, would you like to say a few words on the matter?
It was only just to say I was going to be here present this evening, so thank you for inviting me as well, just alongside Mark to address if there were any sort of operational questions. So I've given an answer there, and I've put my contact details below, so should anyone wish to be in touch with me. As I've said, I am one of the neighbourhood team sergeants within the Outer Bath area, so I've got a team of colleagues who support me and you across the whole of the Baines area, so it might not be that I cover your area, but if you've got anything you'd like to discuss direct, then please do get in touch, and either myself or a colleague will be happy to help as best we can. So I'll leave you with my details, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. I'll leave you all to it.
Thank you very much, Dan, and we will ensure, please, Alison, that those specific details are included in the minutes, so there can be access for all. Thank you. Coming back to Dina, do you have any additional comments you wish to make, Dina, please?
Well, I was wondering if it might be worth just putting the motion back on the screen, because there may be some points that perhaps members of parishes or others want to raise. Particularly, I would welcome any comments that they may have on how they would wish to work with the council in ensuring that our public places are safe for women and girls.
One comment that, in fact, the Dean encouraged councillors to make at our meeting last night was to highlight areas, and certainly within your parishes, which you have street lighting, you have perhaps park lighting, to highlight any areas where, because of overgrown trees or bushes, etc., other obstacles, the light protection is being compromised. Please let your ward councillor know, or indeed, if you feel that strongly, I'm sure Dina won't mind if you contact her directly. Or rather, Dina, who is is it just David?
It is just David, but I'm aware that she's a cabinet assistant and I don't want to overwhelm her. So if you want to, I don't mind being overwhelmed. So if you want to send things to me in the first instance, that's absolutely fine.
Lovely, thank you. You are going to clarify what Ask Angela.
Oh, thank you. Yes, no, it is a scheme, and it's mostly sort of relies on a sort of a poster or some information that encourages people, women particularly, if they feel that they are receiving unwelcome attention, that they can use a code word to bar staff or somebody of authority within that premise, who can then alert someone to come to usually a woman's rescue. So it's a way of not necessarily having to, for women particularly, who may be feeling particularly vulnerable, not to have to themselves confront somebody that they may be fearful of.
Are there any, if we can have the, thank you. Are there any questions or comments that you would like? This is your meeting, guys. So is there anything you would like to say, comment? Yes, no, back?
I say that I'm very happy following our update in November to come back to a parish liaison meeting and provide that update. I'm hoping that what we've presented is quite self-explanatory, and that's why we're not getting any questions. But I would also like to emphasise that this is not politically driven. This is absolutely cross-party, and so, you know, although I maybe the instigator, you know, I'm delighted that Lisa is our chair of the group, and, you know, we have contributions from everybody, and it is, I think, a really good way of working on matters that, you know, we as women and obviously men as well care so much about.
Thank you. Josie, who not using the chat, but never mind. Josie, put your hand up. I can see the yellow hand.
Yeah. Can the resolutions that you've just put up be sent out with the minutes, please?
Certainly can.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, you know Dina's address. As I say, if you have got specific issues in parts of your parishes, please let us know about them, because it could help vulnerable people. And let's remember, it's not just women and children, but any vulnerable person that we want to keep safe. Okay, so we're now going to move on to our second guest speaker this evening, Dan Norris, who's the West of England Metro Mayor, responsible for WECA, the West of England Combined Authority, who is going to tell us what's going on. Dan, where are you?
Hello, Lisa. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, lovely to see you, Lisa, and everybody else on this meeting, which is well attended, which is great, and to hear Mark. I missed Kevin at the beginning. I don't know if Kevin did speak, but I missed him, so apologies for that. But it's great to see you all. I don't propose to speak for very long, because I know from experience of Zoom calls that you'll only be able to concentrate for about 7 minutes on what I say, especially as I'm at the end of the agenda. So what I'll do is I'll say some brief words, if I may, and then allow you to ask any questions you may have. So the first thing I suppose I want to say is that many of you I will have spoken to you already. I've spoken to many of you as councillors already, or as officers. But for those who haven't heard me say the following, I'll just repeat briefly, if I may, some of the things that matter to me and that I think are important. The first thing is that I think, first of all, I think that our region will benefit greatly from strategic working. And what I need to do is sort of clarify what that means, because I think people have their own views of what that is, and I need to tell you what my view of it is. Now, my view is that politics aside, over the last 4 years, our region at the combined authority level and going on to the unitary authority levels has not got more money than it should have got. And what do I mean by that? I think we got every penny that the government intended to give us, and not a penny piece more. And I'm determined to increase the size of that pie, because I think our region, for many years, certainly since I was first a councillor back in the late 80s, I've seen other regions of the country progress really well in all sorts of things, not least public transport and other things. And I've always wondered why we couldn't do better. And so I'm determined to try and change that now. And the reality is that the government, they allocate the vast majority of the money, of course, that we get in local government. And if we are to succeed in getting more money than the level that we just normally get, we have to work in the way that they want. And the way they want is for us to work strategically right across the region. And that makes sense if you think about it. Public transport doesn't just stop at a council border, it continues on. And so they want brilliant ideas that are going to actually be bigger than the sum of our parts. And what I'd have to say to you is that coming into politics again, having taken some time out with a fresh pair of eyes, I'm quite concerned by some of the things that I've seen. It does seem that we have a a kind of divvying up culture amongst our councils, where each council just thinks, well, what do we need and how do we get it? And the unitary authority and the combined authority is somehow the banker. And in fact, if that were the government's intention, then obviously they just give the money straight to unitary authorities. It's because they want the strategic thinking that they put it through the combined authority and the Metro Mayor. And I think it can work very effectively. Just look at other Metro Mayors across the country that have secured very large sums over and above what they would have otherwise have got, because they've worked effectively in that strategic way. Now, what kind of concerns me is when I look at some of the projects we've got some amazing officers that come up with some really good ideas, and I want to be very fair about that. But I also think that sometimes it's a kind of divvying up between the unitary authorities. So, for example, and I'm not referring to any particular example as such, but if, for example, Bristol were to get a certain amount of money and Baines were to get a certain amount of money for a particular strategic area, South Gloucestershire would then ask for its project in order that somehow created the balance, roughly based pro rata on the populations. However, it may just be that what South Gloucestershire are asking for is not the strongest bid, is not the best thing for our region as a whole. And I'm determined to avoid that. So what I want to do is have this strategic working. I'm hoping to meet with the Prime Minister very soon to have a discussion exactly about that. I'm looking to change the powers and the resources that we get in our region so that we can all power forward. And let me just say to you that I know people are always anxious, especially us, because we are political, many of us, and assigned to political parties. Let me say to you very clearly that my judgment of the role of Metro Mayor is that actually it's not that party political. It seems obvious to me what a good public transport system looks like, for example. It seems obvious what good skills and training looks like. I bet we'd all pretty much agree on those things. And what I want to do is to assure you that I will want to allocate monies to the best bids that come up, irrespective of where they are in the west of England, whether that be in South Gloucestershire, whether that be in your area and in Baines, or whether that be in Bristol. Because what I want is the very best for our region that benefits us more than just the divvying up system that I think has failed us. Now, if you think that what's happened in the past has been good enough, then you may not agree with me. But if you look at other regions when you're out and about or visiting, and you think we could do a lot better and we could do as well as other parts of the country, and our people deserve that and require that, then I hope you will consider that the strategic way of working that the government is requesting of us is actually adhered to, and that we work hard for that. And I think that's probably enough for me now, because I know my 7 minutes are probably up.
We're going to let you have far more than 7 minutes, Dan. Now, thank you for those few words. Again, returning to some of the questions that you have been asked from the ALCA reps. How do you see the future support for villages and hamlets, such as Carlicot, developing? Do you think there will be a good enough service or an excellent service? Are you looking at connecting to a hub? Is the Bristol to Bath corridor still a priority? Would you like to comment on that, please?
Okay, I have to be frank, Lisa, I couldn't quite hear your question. The quality was poor as you spoke, but I'll do my best.
I'll repeat that again. How do you see the future support for villages and hamlets, such as Carlicot, developing? Do you think that there will be a good enough service or an excellent service? Are you looking at connecting to a hub? Is the Bristol to Bath corridor still a priority?
Okay, well, perhaps I can go through the ones I can recall and you can point me to the ones I haven't mentioned. But look, certainly villages and hamlets need more support, particularly when it comes to public transport, than they do currently enjoy. And I have to tell you that I'm very pleased that we have been able to secure just over £500 million, 540 million for a public transport system over the next 5 years, subject to green lighting from the government in the coming weeks. And that is an exciting prospect, but it's nowhere near what we actually need in the longer term. And I should put this in context that lots of people talk about a mass transport system or mass transit, as it's usually referred to. And that has as many meanings as it does individuals, because it's kind of one of those definitions that kind of covers everything that's over and above what any area has already got. But even if we had the contracts in front of us and I signed them off tomorrow, a mass transit system from the west of England would probably take 12 to 15 years to be up and working. So what I'm concerned about is dealing with and addressing the problems that we've got now, because public transport isn't what we all want. It's got a lot better, I think, in many respects, but it's certainly far from perfect and needs to improve a lot. So the big emphasis will be on buses with the money that we've secured. I think that's really, really important. But I need to tell you, it's good news, but it's not as good news as it might have been, that the money comes with conditions, and the conditions are that it largely focuses on the urban areas and the areas immediately outside. So it does mean that the more remote rural areas are not included in this tranche of money. And obviously I'm thinking hard about that, because I acutely aware, having represented North East Somerset as the Wansdyke seat for many a year, that public transport is acutely important in those areas too. It's not either or, it's got to be good for all people. Whether it's good enough or excellent, well, I'd always aim for excellent in any event. I'd always try and do that. What we might find is that funding might limit us to good enough, but good enough might be better than what we've got in some places now, because certainly from where I live, near Pensford, some buses only run once a week into Bath, for example, and you have to do your shopping within 2 hours and get out, or you're there all week. So that clearly isn't a very strong system. Could you please ask me the last two parts of that question, Lisa? Could you remind me?
It was, are you looking at connecting to a hub?
Yeah.
Is Bristol to Bath corridor still the main priority?
Okay, well, look, we will need hubs, as it were. That we've got to join everything up, basically. That's what it means to have a good public transport system. We need to be able to, with at least as little effort as possible, be able to get from wherever it is we want to go from and to wherever we want to go, without worrying about, will the tickets be working, will we be able to transfer from one form of transport to another, and so on. And hubs are part of the solution to that, and making it all sort of work and connect. What I am aware of, though, is that that needs lots of joint working and working closely. At the moment, quite a lot of officers, transport officers, for example, are still in the unitary authorities. I'd like to see them out in the combined authority, working really closely together, so that they're not spending hours, working remotely from one another, but getting on with it, because we need delivery as quickly as possible. And then in terms of the Bristol-Bath corridor, is it the top priority? Well, I don't know if I would have said it was the top priority. I think there are a number of priorities, but it is certainly an important priority. And there'll be lots of consultation coming up. And some of you may have been invited to something I'm doing, I think it is on Friday, because I'm very keen that you are all involved in these consultations in a full and proper way, because you know your wards better than anybody else, arguably, and certainly better than me in many instances. So I will need your wisdom, your input, to make sure that runs as smoothly and as effectively and successfully as possible.
Thank you. Now there, as well as a question that's already been submitted about the update on the progress of the M4 to the South Coast study being carried out by National Highways. There's also a comment in the chat, a question in the chat from Hannah at Bath Eastern about poor reliability of buses, and also the Cleveland Bridge closure. She asked a specific, which I'm not sure that you're in able to respond to specifically, yep. But clearly the idea of the Cleveland Bridge being the A4, being the main through way where you've got other routes outside is one that is a very sensitive topic. Do you have views on how perhaps major revamping of the road system interconnecting the A39 and the A46 might alleviate this? Is there plans in terms of the whole network system?
Okay. Well, the straight answer is I'm not aware. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been some work done and people aren't talking about it, certainly at officer level. I have been to the Cleveland Bridge to see the closure. I went with the Bath MP and local councillors, and they made quite a strong case for the fact that those very heavy vehicles are clearly not welcome and cause an awful lot of implications and consequences for going through that part of Bath. But what it did seem to me was that there was quite a lot of I don't know, tension with maybe Wiltshire, which needs to there needs to be close working, obviously, and a solution to be found there. But it did seem kind of frustrating that Wiltshire could perhaps sit on its hands a bit, and then it left the problem within Baines. And also it has a much wider knock-on consequence too to the whole of the west of England, of course, because if there are issues about traffic in and around Bath, that knocks on to South Gloucestershire as well as North East Somerset and Bristol indeed too. So I can't give you a quick solution because I suspect that that's about people using their party links to work with other colleagues in other authorities to try and get that kind of solution, because I do think it needs a candid discussion to try and work out a way forward. But I do understand the issues. I'm not sure what I can do at this point, but I'll certainly look at it, and you've alerted me to it again. And then did you say something about the M4? Because again, the line was very poor.
Sorry, yes. The update on the progress of the M4 to the South Coast study being carried out by National Highways. Do you have any input or views on this?
No, I don't really. I'll have to familiarise myself much more with it because I don't know anything about it particularly, and maybe I should. Why are you asking? You better tell me.
This is the late question that has come through. You, I'm sure, will respond given the written reply after this meeting. Could I just highlight another question on a different topic? Yeah. Again, sent in by Alcaret. On housing, what do you mean by affordable housing?
Well, if I had the answer to that, Lisa, I'd be very well off indeed, wouldn't I? I mean, the truth is that there's very little housing that I think is genuinely affordable now. I think housing has just got to a place where it's very hard to afford. And it usually requires people on really reasonably good incomes and maybe to be in working with or applying for a mortgage with a couple as part of a couple. But the reality is we are going to, all of us, have to face the reality of affordable housing, not just in the sense of purchasing homes, but also to rent them. And I think, as we're all realizing from the shocks from the energy challenges we now face, to actually afford to heat them and run them. Because that's going to get a lot more expensive before it comes down, and I suspect it probably never will come down. And the solution to that, I suspect, is environmental work, things like insulation, and I think that is crucial because I suspect that the unit cost of electricity is going to continue to rise, and gas in its units as well. But if we can insulate homes properly, we probably have bills that are about the same size because we're not wasting that electricity and gas and the heat that it generates out through our windows or walls or roofs or whatever it might be. What I feel acutely aware of is that I have to, with my skills and training hat on as the Metro Mayor, try and anticipate what our needs are going to be in the future, because this seems key to it. Because if you believe in a market, if you believe that housing should be provided by largely the private sector, then housing affordability is down to supply and demand. So you need to build more homes. But as we know, there's often pushback when more homes are proposed. And so we have to, as politicians, all of us, square that circle. Also, I think we have got to think about maybe where the green belt is. I do believe we need to keep the green belt as the same proportion. But I was, and this was brought home to me particularly starkly the other day when I was at the, I don't know how many of you know, the ambulance, the air ambulance service that's based just near Almondsbury Interchange, just off the M4, M5 junction there. And that is actually green belt, all that land around it, but you'd never know it because of all the pollution from the vehicles, cars and what have you. So I do think we need to look at the green belt and think about what is truly green belt. And of course, green land that matters isn't necessarily green belt. It could be green fields that are not in the green belt. So we mustn't forget that too. But I do think we need to think about that, because I want to see, the very irreplaceable and precious green land that we have properly protected. But I worry that we've got some green belt that is a bit like the Almondsbury situation, which is just crazy. You wouldn't consider it any longer green belt. And there's probably some green belts that we need to think about maybe is open for development, simply because it will be nearer public transport. And the spatial plan fell because the inspectors rejected it because we were proposing to build homes, I understand, under the previous mayor, in places where there was no public transport to it. And clearly the government wouldn't want that. That would be unsustainable and cause a huge lot of problems. So we've got some real big challenges ahead. But affordability, well, we, I suspect, need to build more homes ourselves. I wish the government would give us money as councils to do that, because I think that deals with a particular challenge. I know I benefited from growing up with my family in a council house at one stage in our lives. I'm sure many of you did too. I do think that's important. I don't think selling off council homes was necessarily a bad thing. I think it was not replacing them that was the problem. And I think we're now finding that. And with young people having, in some instances, money to spend in sort of an everyday way, but not money or sufficient money to be able to secure their own home, is a real problem and a real worry. And the fact that those young people are looking to grandparents or parents to leave them resources in their wills in order that they do get on the housing ladder, if that's what they wish, does seem a bit crazy to me. I'd like them to enjoy the opportunities that I suspect many of you had, even if they choose not to do it that way. I'd like them to have that opportunity, and I don't think many young people do, frankly.
Thank you. We have a question from Dina now.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, Dan. I'm sure you'll be delighted to know this is not a transport related question, but it is aligned to the work, obviously, that the West of England will be doing in terms of planning.
Yeah.
And I suppose a little bit about planning roads and public spaces. So I think you probably know where I'm going with this, which is, can we rely on your support at West of England Combined Authority to ensure that you do everything you can against violence against women and girls?
Okay. Well, look, obviously every politician, every person is going to say they are, but let me tell you a bit about why my commitment might be more meaningful than just those words. When I was a young man, first in child protection, I was trained by the NSPCC. This would have been, I don't know, the 1980s and 90s, something like that. And what was happening at that time, and of course, social work and people who work in child protection are mainly women anyway. The biggest number of deaths in any profession was actually social work and child protection at that particular time. And what I did was write a book about it and say how, in practical terms, how social workers and others in the public sector could protect themselves from the violence that they face, obviously in a professional context. And I also have devoted my life in child protection to working with families and young people. I spent quite a significant time working in mainly South Gloucestershire, but also Bath and Bristol too. And I worked mainly with people who were sex workers who, through their work, meant their children were at risk from violence and harm for obvious reasons. So I have devoted a lot of my life to addressing the problem of violence as it's faced by men and women, but particularly women and children. And what I would say is that it's a much wider problem, in my view, Diana, than just the stuff we're reading in the headlines. I think the way women are treated in general is poor compared to their male colleagues. And I particularly think that in women who are in politics or women who are in senior positions, be they chief executives, I think the way they are treated is much tougher and harder. If they're firm and strong and say no and make a decision, they're seen as often bossy or controlling, whereas when a man does it, they're seen as a great leader. And I think that's the problem, is that you've got to put it in context. All these things are contextual. And it seems to me that until we have true equality, we are not really going to truly address the particular issue that's faced by women and children at the hands of people who want to be violent, which are, I'm sad to say, invariably men.
Thank you. Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite Councillor Ron Hopkins from Westfield, because he's got two issues that he would like to raise with you. Ron, over to you. Can you mute?
Sorry, are you coming across to me about the VPA?
The situation in the neighbouring authority liable to give permission for housing development.
No, that's not me.
Councillor Ron Hopkins, Westfield to everyone. Oh.
Hey, Ron, I can see you.
All right, not to worry about that. It was a comment, perhaps, more than a question, because I believe the neighbouring authority, Mendip, has given permission on the basis that Baines...
I have a question, Chairman.
Yes.
I have a question. Yeah.
So, carry on.
Okay. Dan, I followed your career with great interest, so I admit that I'm a bit biased in that you're an extremely likable fellow. But that's the end of the flannel. So
okay, okay. I'm disappointed. You could have gone on longer, Ron.
Yes, indeed. Look, I'm a councillor in Westfield, and I apologise to everybody else. We've got a situation where Mendip Council we think they're about to give permission for 250 plus houses to be built, literally on their border. You could probably throw a stone from the housing estate across their border into Baines. Baines strongly objected, Midsummer Norton strongly objected, and Westfield strongly objected. You should know that 367 through Westfield and Midsummer Norton is the highest traffic density anywhere in Baines, other than the London Road in Bath. This is going to add to it. The proposed development is going to add out commuting and a variety of overloads on our infrastructure. Yet Mendip in their research said that the local infrastructure in the neighbourhoods was sufficient to easily support the new development. End of diatribe. Do you have any power, or your organisation have any power to intervene, to mediate in this situation? Baines has written a strongly worded objection to it. Mendip seem to be ignoring it. Please let me know.
Well, Ron, I think I can tell you quite quickly. I'm afraid I don't, because obviously my powers relate to the area that I have responsibilities for, but I'm happy to make representations if you want to drop me a note, and I'll see what I can do for whatever that's worth. But I mean, it does kind of make the argument for what I was saying in my opening remarks about strategic thinking, because of course, if that area was part of the wider area, we could perhaps think in a strategic way. And when you don't, when you have these sort of rigid borders in smaller units, and they think and sort of contemplate their navel and think only what's good for them rather than what's for the wider region, you get exactly what you're talking about. And of course, we see it within the combined authority, because sometimes the unitary authorities want housing in a particular area that suits them, but doesn't necessarily suit their neighbouring authority. And so I get lots of conversations with councillors and others between each of the unitary authorities where similar things have happened. And I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer that would give you more hope. It's a great shame. What we need, I suppose, is, what do we need? Well, I'm going to resist saying a Labour government, because that's what I would think, wouldn't I? But look, what we need is something higher up, really, that sorts all these problems out, because it just seems to me that it does seem unfair that just across a border can have a big impact on the communities that are in the majority next door. And that does seem unjust.
Thank you, Dan. I'll get all my colleagues and our Baines councillors who are at this meeting listening to get together to write you a letter explaining. Perhaps you can use your power as a mediary.
Well, I can't promise anything, but I will do my best, Ron, and I hope you'll understand.
Okay, thank you. Could you put your hand down, and also Dina, if you could put your yellow hand down. John Adler from Freshford has made a comment regarding the A36 potential development. John, would you like to comment further?
Yeah, this is to do with the M4 to South Coast arterial route.
Yeah.
And no criticism intended here.
Yeah.
But a full study was undertaken by the Valley Parishes Alliance, who put in a very strong objection to the A36 and gives some excellent background figures, etc., and lays it out. It's quite stodgy, but I just mention it so I can point you in the right direction to obtain the information. No more, that's all I was commenting on.
What is it called again, John?
The Valley Parishes Alliance. It's a group of all the parishes along the Limply-Stoke Valley.
Okay.
So we're basically cross-border.
Okay. I've got that. I've written that down. I'll have a look.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Jan Helps is asking the question about repurposing all the empty retail spaces in our town centre as accommodation. And certainly you may be aware, Jan, that this is happening in part in some areas of Bath. But Dan, would you care to comment on this?
Yeah, I think this is essential. Society's changing. The way we shop, the way we do our business, the way we obviously undertake leisure is altering and changing. And while it's kind of frightening in some respects, it's also a great opportunity to make a better future, in my view. So I think we should be optimistic about it rather than frightened. I'm certainly happy to target resources as long as I think they're really good ideas, coming back to my opening remarks, for exactly that, because I know there's stuff going on in Bath where that is happening already, and I think that's good. But I want it to be wherever it's needed and wherever there's a good idea. I don't want to just repurpose if it's not a good idea, but if it's a really good idea. And I just think, you know, the challenge we've got, I think, is that the pandemic has also added to the pace of change and the kind of change. And I suspect people's working practices will now be different in the future to what they were pre-pandemic. Again, that may not be absolutely wonderful. There may be good parts about that and less good parts about it, because, you know, it's fine working from home if you've got a large room with a Cocker Spaniel dog and able to, you know, do things. But if you're in a small house where you've got a family and it's not very large, it's harder to work from home. And maybe there are pressures there that aren't beneficial to working on Zoom. But what I think is that it means we do have to, and I'm hoping to do this, think very carefully and analyze very carefully what has happened during the pandemic and how we can take advantage of it rather than be undermined by it. Because I suspect that some of our traffic issues, you know, some of the awful traffic that we've experienced, Ron mentioned the second busiest traffic, I think you said, in your area outside of Bath in the Baines district. You know, if we're going to deal with some of that, and I've experienced some of that in both those areas, frankly, we do need to perhaps stagger when people start and finish work and think of new ways. And that could be possible if we make more use of home working, as long as people aren't forced to do something that they don't want to do. I was at Airbus today and was asking them about how they were finding the pandemic. And similarly, I was speaking to a big financial company, Hargreaves Lansdowne, the other day, and how they dealt with it. And they kind of felt that in some ways productivity had improved, but in other ways it had fallen. So what we need to do is analyze that really carefully. And I guess the true data won't become clear quite yet. We're still in the pandemic after all. And I am anxious about what might happen over the winter. I obviously hope it will be fine, but I don't know. I think the pandemic is almost characterized by the fact that it's a bit unpredictable and you can't tell what exactly is happening. But we have to hope that we can get through the winter and that it's completely sorted by the summer. And then maybe we can learn some really important lessons for how we repurpose all sorts of buildings and structures and make the most of it. Because I think the future should be bright and positive. And I certainly think it certainly was always hard in the past to find good leisure facilities and good space to have meetings and all that kind of thing. So here's the opportunity, but it will be painful for some, because, you know, we have had a huge rental business going on, and I've just seen, as you might have heard, Marks and Spencer's have announced they're leaving the site in Bristol, in Broadmead there. So there's another example of the changing pattern, you know, of all the shops, Marks and Spencer, well known, well liked, is deciding that it can't afford to carry on in the same old way. But then that space there in Broadmead, similarly as across the west of England and in Baines, could be used for some wonderful things. I just think it takes our imagination and our determination to do that in order to make that a positive thing, not a negative thing.
Thank you. Very good ideas and views there. Liz Kingston would like to raise an issue about the clean air zone. Liz, like to unmute.
I've unmuted. It's a remark, really, that I've got the Bath has had the clean air zone and it's very successful. but they've just pushed the problem onto Wiltshire. And my comment really was just to say that, as I think Dan said, the councils that work closely with each other just do not work side by side. They've all got their little pockets of the areas they cover, and okay, well, let's have a clean air zone. Let's do this, and it's worked well. But actually, it's ruined Westbury. The A350 hasn't coped at the best of times because they've never had a bypass. Not that I live there, but I'm very close to the area. And it's just, to me, in a very sort of simplistic way, that we're all working individually. All the councils are working individually. Why isn't somebody looking at this holistically and saying, well, actually, you know, all right, Bath wants a clean air zone, Bristol wants a clean air zone, but actually what we're going to do, what's that going to mean to somebody else? And as a novice, I'm a novice as a parish councillor, I just don't understand, you know, why something as simple as a clean air zone in Bath, which is fantastic, has just pushed the problem eastwards.
Well, look, Liz, you kind of make my point in my opening remarks about the need for strategic working. What I guess I'd say to you is that what I think the government are going to be doing is giving more powers to metro mayors and more finances and resources to metro mayors. That seems pretty clear to me from the indications that are happening now. I think they're also going to create more metro mayors in other places where they don't currently exist. So what I think we all have to be pushing for is our parliamentarians to make sure that there's some crossover between metro mayors so that we can kind of deal with the kind of thing you're talking about. And it's lovely to talk to someone who's in Wiltshire and be, this discussion is an example of how we should be kind of working and kind of getting things sorted. But I think that's what we've got to do. We also have got to change, and change is hard. But we've done things in the past in a certain way, and it's not fit for modern purposes. It's not fit for our times, and it takes things like pandemics and other things, other shocks sometimes, to make us realise that. Because as I speak personally, particularly as we get older, I find change harder too. But we have got to change if we're going to have a better future. I suppose the definition of stupidity is to keep repeating the same mistakes of the past over and over again. And we have to decide that we don't want to do that. And it also takes trust between politicians of different parties. We have to reach out and see each other's character and strengths and charm even, because I'm quite happy to say that many of the people I like very much are Conservatives, and some of the people I hate the most are Labour. And we've got to be kind of honest that actually, at the end of the day, irrespective of our parties, we're people, and we have to try and work together wherever we can, because if we don't, we're letting down our communities now and certainly future generations.
Okay. Now, I think some information was going to be given on the clean air zone situation by Sarah Warren, but you seem to have disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Sarah.
Yeah. Hello. Well, it was just to explain really that the clean air zone. So of course we are keen to be working more closely with Wiltshire in general, but to explain that the clean air zone was Bath was mandated by government to bring one in, whether, so we actually didn't have a choice about that, or very much about the format of it. But the idea behind it is to provide funding to upgrade vehicles. And in fact, 95% of the HGVs that come through Bath are compliant with the clean air zone anyway and don't pay the charge. But in fact, those that aren't will have the opportunity to access grants and loans to upgrade their vehicles. So in fact, the whole wider area will benefit from cleaner air as a result. But equally, if Westbury have seen an increase in HGVs, I mean, that partly will relate to a nationwide increase in HGVs that we've seen since prior to COVID lockdown, because the way in which we shop has changed. And so nationwide, we've seen an increase in both HGVs and vans. So every town will have experienced that. So it's just to put a bit of context there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, the comments or requests to speak?
You're working me hard, Lisa. You're keeping me at the grindstone.
Oh, I know. Well, Angel's behind you, looking very.
She is, and because I've got my suit trousers on, she's not allowed to sit on my lap, so she's causing me trouble.
Okay.
I'll show everybody, Angel. For those who don't know, Angel, up you come, Angel. Okay, good girl. Keep still now. This is Angel, who's one of the lovers of my life, but she's very hungry and hasn't had a. I'm not going to say the word because she'd go crazy, but her DINNER.
Well, I think that's the biggest hint that we could take from that comment. If there are no other questions, very big thank you to Dan. You've answered a lot of questions over a whole range of issues and still managed to stay smiling. So well done you. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure we'd like to welcome you back in the not too distant future, as there will be new issues that we will want to, the parishes will want to raise with you, and be able to talk to you direct. I think that is very important, that they can feel that they can talk to you direct, raise issues with you. So thank you again very much. You may now go and give Angel her supper, and good night to you.
Thank you very much for sharing so well. I really appreciate it, Lisa, and thank you everybody who's been spending time listening to me this evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right. Okay, well, we have now the date of future meetings. The next one is scheduled for the 23rd of March, and then there's July 13th and October 13th. It does, I mean, it's really been excellent that so many parishes have been able to attend. It does seem that in this instance, Zoom is really beneficial in allowing so many people to participate. And Alison and Sarah would like your feedback. We'd like your feedback as to whether you would care to continue these meetings via Zoom, or whether you want to return to live meetings. So please send that feedback to Alka in terms of Kathy and Dawn, or to Alison and Sarah, the community engagement team, because it really is fantastic that you out there in the parishes all around Bath and North and Somerset can participate, ask searching questions, and do ask searching questions. You can ask them about something that's going on in Baines itself. Certainly we hope to have both Mark and Dan back in the future, and certainly if you have other ideas, for speakers, we'd be very happy to try and facilitate that. It is fantastic that so many of you have come tonight. I've really enjoyed it. You've been very frisky and forthcoming with your views. It has been a fantastic evening. Are there any final comments? That I'm getting some feedback that Zoom works well. So keep your views coming. We collate them and we will let you know in plenty of time before the next meeting. So as it is 4 minutes past 8, I'm sorry I've talked too much. Have a good evening for the rest of the evening. Good night to you all. Bye-bye.